going to talk about the definition and the benefits that we can get from time management, and then we'll dive into 7 steps to time management. When we look at the definition of time management, it's the ability to use one's time effectively or productively. Most of the time we see this come across at work, but it can come across in our households, in our personal lives, in Toastmasters. And it's really, how can we be more efficient at doing what we do? How do we get the most out of our day? I'm not sure about each of you, but sometimes you just wake up and your day gets away from you. Before you realize it, it's noon and nothing is done. Maybe you've gotten a pot of coffee made, maybe you haven't. And the day just goes away and you're left wondering, I didn't accomplish anything. Time management, when we use our time effectively, it allows us to put a little bit of structure into that so that we can reach those goals that we want to reach. When we do that, we're going to see a great deal of benefits from it. We're going to be more productive and efficient with our time. The ability to be able to clean your house and take in a webinar all in the same hour could become a huge life-changing skill for some. But mostly, we become less stressed. Stress wears on us, and when you're constantly looking at all of the things that you have to do day after day and nothing is getting done, it gets to be frustrating and it wears on you and it builds up. But when we have strong time management skills, we can start to see that stress go away. When the stress goes away, when we're in charge of our own day, we can then start seeing opportunities for advancement. If we're working on a project and we're so busy and we're not making headways with it, maybe the boss might overlook us for another employee that has more perceived time. So we want to make sure we're staying on top of our time management so that we can take care of these benefits that are there for us to have. And when we do, we'll start to see transitions happening. So let's dive into the 7 steps of time management. If anybody's ever taken time to do any research on that, there is tips for everything and anything, from how to clean your house more time efficiently to how to buy your groceries in a systematic way. But today I want to focus on the 7 steps that really kind of speak to me and allow me to accomplish what I do. The first is writing a to-do list. I am a huge list person. And when I say write a to-do list, sometimes it's an action item list, sometimes it's a list of goals of what I'm hoping to get done. But at the end of the day, I want a list that can show me where I want to take the day. I write my list in the morning and at night. That way I have a clear look of the full day as well as the next day. So when I'm writing my list, I tend to break it down into different sections. For me, I've got my household to run, so I have to take care of that. So what kind of things do I need to do with the kids? Do they have cheer practice? Do I need to make sure that they've got their craft supplies or lunch supplies for the next day? What does that look like? What about my household? What needs to get done there? There's always the vacuuming and the cutting of the grass and the dusting, the laundry. What does that look like? And what are the things that I want to do there? And then there's my job. So what am I hoping to get done at work, and how am I going to get the few things done that I need to tackle in that day? And then you throw Toastmasters into there, and where does that fit? And how do I move those goals forward? So a to-do list is really just a daily list of goals. What is it that you want to accomplish? I flag mine on the ones that are the most important to me. Which ones do I have to get done? Some might venture that I have to pick my kids up from cheer. I have to do that because otherwise I'm going to get a few phone calls. So I can't waver on that one. That one's a must do. But I don't always have to vacuum my house. It can go lower on the list, and I can prioritize based on what are my have to do's and my want to do's. And when I start to see my list that way, it allows me to have that clear picture of where do I want to tackle. And some items you'll see when you build a list are 5, 10 minutes in size. So they're very easy to fit in throughout doing other things. You can manage to get a whole lot more done when you have an idea of what it is you need to get done. Now, I mentioned I write my list at the end of the day as well. I write my list at the beginning of the day, and then at night as I'm sitting down and I'm processing, I cross things off my to-do list and I make a new list. This has sometimes got things that transfer over it from the morning list, and some things just fall off because they're no longer important. If vacuuming was important to me this morning, it might not be important this afternoon. Maybe it was because my mother was coming to town and I didn't want her to see my house, but she's come, she's seen, it's done. I don't care anymore, so it can fall off my list. But I want to maneuver it that way. And the reason I do it at night as well is I like to clear my head, get these things out of my brain so that I can actually have a really restful night's sleep. I'll know what I have to do in the morning. When I wake up in the morning while the coffee's brewing, I then revisit the list. I cross anything off that's not important. I add anything that is, and it's my starting point to move forward. So those are the two kind of strategies I use when I'm doing my list building that allows me to maneuver through the day. Removing yourself from distractions. That's a huge one. I don't know if everyone on the line is a huge social media user, but sometimes I'll come down in the morning and if the first thing I do is get on my phone, it can be a solid hour before I even realize that I've wasted all of that time. I like to, when I come down in the morning, I make my coffee, I get the kids' lunches ready and off to school, make sure that's all done. But if I hop on my phone first and foremost, it is usually the trigger that sets my day astray. So you want to make sure that you're positioning your distractions in your day. They're there, they exist, account for them. Usually what I'll do is I'll make my list, I make my coffee, and then I sit down and I say, okay, I need to allocate 30 minutes of social media time for myself. And I set the timer and I set myself to the 30 minutes of social media time so that I can keep on track because it's really easy to get involved in your email or social media and you lose track of time and before you know it, a couple of hours have gone past and you're no further along getting the things you wanted done. The other important one, if you're not on social media or maybe that's not your trigger, email. You have to turn your email off from time to time just to allow yourself to work on some pretty big projects. For myself, if I'm working on I call them thinking projects, I'm trying to be creative, I'm trying to move the ball forward. If I'm working on a project like that and my email is dinging open every 2 seconds, it is really, really hard to focus on the projects that I need to be focusing on. So I will often turn the phone off, turn my email off, and really just get to work and tackle those lists of mine. And you want to take breaks. You don't want to just sit down and say, okay, I am not getting up from my desk for a period of 6 hours because it's not realistic. We need to give that break in our minds, in our eyes. We want to get up and stretch our legs, go for a little walk, get some water, and get that blood flowing. One of the things that I always encourage people to do when they're taking their breaks is get their hands up and over their heads a couple of times. Because if you can raise your hands over your head, even if you're just doing it 10 times, it's really going to get that blood flowing and pumping into your heart. And it'll be equivalent to having a nice little brisk walk in the middle of the day. And when you can get your blood flowing and circulating that way, it really stimulates you and puts you back on track so that you can be more productive. I'll share a story with you. When my husband was studying for exams, he would often sit there and study, and he's got his books and he's deep in thought. But his retention of the material he found was falling off the longer he did it, and he wasn't retaining the information that he needed. And even his study coach said, in order to retain the information, you have to take regular scheduled breaks. And that way you can start to move around and get back where you left off. Your brain will adjust and focus faster and easier that way. I think the key to taking breaks, though, you want to make sure they're scheduled. You want to take a break. You don't want to take a whole detour. So make sure that you're timing your breaks, keep them to 10, 15 minutes, and then get back to work or get back to whatever list you were tackling. That way you can always be sure you're moving the ball in the right forward. That doesn't make sense. Moving forward. You want to take your big tasks and you want to break them up. Sometimes you'll be working on a really big project and you quite frankly, you don't know where to start with it. And maybe the big project is you have sold your house and you've got to pack everything up. And it's big. Where do you go with it and what do you do with it? So that's when you want to make sure that you have a plan. Write those little lists, have a game plan, and break them up into smaller projects. Maybe the list is, today I'm going to pack the kitchen up, tomorrow I'm going to pack the garage up, then I'm going to do a couple of other things, and then I'm going to come back to finish packing up the family room. So you want to be able to break those down into smaller tasks. If you look at pathways, maybe it is, I want to get my strategic path level completed. I want to do all 5 levels, but that may be a really, really big task. And you may say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do speech number 1, and I'm going to schedule speech number 2. Essentially, you've just broken down that really big project into smaller pieces that are more manageable and easier to fit in. And find your productive time. It is key to be able to assess yourself and know when you're most productive. There's a few different times of day that people will tend to be more productive in. You know, for me, I'm a morning person. I can accomplish a great deal of stuff in the morning, whereas my husband is more of a night person and he gets his tasks list done at night. I will, there was a couple of Saturdays ago, for those of you that know me, I get a lot of stuff done in a very short amount of time. And in doing so, it was a Saturday morning. It was about 11 a.m. and my daughter strolls into the family room where I'm sitting and I'm working on my computer. And she's like, this is odd. I'm like, what? What's so odd? She says, you're not going out today? And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not going out today? I said, I've been to the store, I've been to the gym, I've gone over to my brother's house, I've done his taxes, I have gotten 2 loads of laundry done, I've done the dishes. Like, I've had a full day. I've got all my social media done, my bills are done, and I'm just sitting here having a cup of coffee on my own right now. Huh. And that's all she said. Like, there was just no words, but she was stunned that I was still sitting there because she knew I was a morning person and didn't actually know that I had already had a full day by 11 a.m. And, you know, it comes back to, when are you productive? When are you going to get the most stuff done? Use that time and really maximize it and build your lists around that. So if you know you're productive in the morning, then really have your list ready to go and start work right away and put those distractions off to the side so that you can get through the bulk of the things that you want to accomplish. Become more efficient. We all want this magical solution of, how can I get more done? How can I be more efficient? I think the key to that is knowing what you want to do and then building that plan around it. I read a book a few years ago, and I apologize, I don't know the name of it, but it was about house cleaning and how you can divide your house cleaning tasks into groups. And when you divide into groups, you can accomplish more. If you can envision that maybe Monday is the day that you dust your house, and Tuesday is the day you clean your bathrooms, and Wednesday is the day you do your laundry, and Thursday is bedding day, that by Friday, you've gotten your house fairly clean and you've just done those little jobs throughout. Instead of saying, oh, I need to clean my house. Where do I start? Break it down into little jobs and fit it in. And just that fine tuning of the efficiency really starts to see a difference in how you can achieve things. And that efficiency it can transfer into everything. I'm not sure how many people on the call have ever made a homemade soup before. And it's one of those things that most soup recipes start out the same way. Cut the onion, cut the carrot, cut the celery, saute onion, carrot, celery. Well, I can now have fine-tuned that art of preparing all of my onion, carrot, and celery, and I will efficiently make 3 batches of soup at the same time because the foundations are the same. And when that's the same, then you can get your 3 pots going. Everything is going at the same time, but cutting an onion and cutting 3 onions at once is a lot easier than cutting an onion, going away, coming back, cutting another, going away, coming back, cutting another. So start grouping them together and thinking just a little larger, a little more outside the box of what things can I do together in order to improve that efficiency. And last but not least, accept your limitations. We have to know what we're capable of and what we can get done. We need to learn to ask for help and delegate. Those are some of the hardest things that we come across, is being able to say, I can't do it all. I just can't. And when you can say that, you start to be able to relieve yourself some of that stress or burden that you efficiently laid on yourself. So you want to be able to know, what can I accomplish and how can I accomplish it? But you also need to know, what are my limits? Am I trying to push my body to do something that it's not capable of doing? And that doesn't mean you're not capable of doing it ever. It just means you're not capable right now. So acknowledge that and look for those other alternatives that you can bring into the portfolio and see where you're at. These 7 tips, they're not unique to me. I'm big on Google, but they are tips that I do tend to live my life by. If anybody wants more details on them, you can get them from Mind of a Winner website, and I've left that website up there for you. They have some really good strategies on there, but I would encourage you, if time management is something that you're really looking into, check out the resources online. There's lots of different articles that you can read, and maybe different tips will resonate with you. And if you're looking for a specific tip, Google that too and see what comes up. I will caution you, remember, one of the steps is not to get too distracted and spend more time than you should on that. So feel free to delegate, reach out to where you need to, and ask for that advice on how do others do it, and start bringing that into your own world. With that, I'm going to open the floor up for any questions that anybody has. If they're looking for any specific strategies that you'd like to pick my brain on, you're welcome to. And I look forward to talking to you guys. So
Tanya, it's Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi. So I have 2 questions.
Sure.
I think they're related. One is, I'm wondering what kind of tool you use for managing your list. And the second part of my question is, I think one of my biggest challenges is managing projects, and maybe that's a separate webinar, and how it impacts my list every day.
Yeah. So I'll tackle the tool I use for my list management. I am old-fashioned pen and paper. I grab those dollar store notepads, and I've got one for my house, one for my Toastmasters, and one for work. And I essentially write down the 3 lists. My Toastmaster list and my work list travel with me, and my house list stays at home. And I kind of maneuver those throughout the day as I tackle different things on them. I cross them off. Could you go with a digital tool? Sure. Some people use Excel as a simple, easy to manage tool. Some people will use Trello. It's really what you're comfortable with. For me, I like the pen and paper. It's there, it's reliable, and even if for some reason I needed my house list and I'm at work, I can start drafting up a new list if I wanted to do that. I email myself different ideas, so if I'm at home, I'll email my ideas to work so that when I get to work, I can update my list there as well. But that's how I tackle that one. Project management, you're right, it's probably a whole other beast in itself. I will tell you the one thing that I do is I will have the master project management list of all of the things that I want to accomplish. And let's say I'm running an event. So my event may look like, my big list will look like invite people, build a budget, secure location, get advertising dollars, prepare signage, launch invitation. And so it'll be fairly high level. But then if I'm talking about launching invitation, I'll have a separate list that says go into constant contact, upload database, draft invitation, send draft to these people to test, get feedback, update again, and I'll maneuver it that way. So I break them down into smaller chunks. And instead of breaking every project down into smaller chunks, I only I only break down the ones that are immediate to me right now. Unless I'm delegating others all off, then I'll break those ones down as well.
That's great. Thank you.
No problem.
Tanya, it's Emily Saint-Hilaire. I have a question for you.
Sure.
I would like to know what is your biggest challenge that you see like each day and how do you manage it?
So my biggest challenge is the unexpected. How do I manage it? And I'll tell you a funny story. I was leaving the house yesterday, and I was on top of the world. I had it. I knew what my day was going to look like. I had just spent time going through some stuff with Jim Carty on the club growth, and I was ready to move forward, and everything was falling into place. And it was a good day. And we're talking, it's 9 a.m. and I'm already marking this as a good day. From the time I locked my front door, got into my car, an email came in. Simply an email. It wasn't a fire-driven email. It was just a, hey, can we schedule an appointment? And I went, huh, I hadn't allocated time for that. And so for me, that's my big one. So how do you manage those emails that come in where somebody is trying to fit into your day that's already planned and organized, and it's a matter of taking that list of what is it that I wanted to get done, and then start prioritizing. Okay, this meeting is really important. I need to move something else off in order to fit it in. Or I need to get efficient at something, or I need to delegate. So it's moving things around that way in order to adjust those on the fly priorities. And it happens a lot to me. My day in itself is really spent on moving other people's lists forward. And then the last hour of the day is when I get to do my own kind of work. So I get the first hour of the day to myself and the last hour of the day to myself. And the in-between of my workday is spent helping everybody else move their list forward. And I think when you know that, you can really start to adjust and build your own efficiencies around that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. But
Perfect.
I have another one.
Sure.
My second one is, we just talking just a minute before about delegation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage what you delegate?
Can you be a little more specific on that? How do I manage what I do?
Do you keep track on like your list, like you're using for your task, or do you use another tool? Or do you make sure that what you delegate is going to be complete?
So I keep it all on the same list. When I delegate something on my list, you'll often find that I put a little triangle next to it, and that means I've delegated it. and then underneath or around there, I'll write who I've delegated it to. So that'll be on my action list. And then when I'm sitting down at the end of the night and I'm writing out my follow-up list of what do I need to do, that's when you'll see that I move that over, but it's no longer, maybe the item is plan a webinar, but I want to give that to Craig to do. So now my action item will be follow up with Craig on planning the webinar. So it's just kind of, it stays on my list, but the action item has now changed. And I might put a different date on it. So I'll write the date, but it'll stay on my list because I want to keep track of it that way. So I'll move things forward that way. I also use Outlook, and I use notes in Outlook a lot and reminders, and they'll pop up on my phone to say, hey, make sure you check in with Craig on this, or I'll set a calendar invite to do the follow-up. And so if I'm assigning a task, I'm usually assigning a follow-up task with it. And if that's done in advance, then great. And if not, I know when it is. So each of the direct reports that I have under me, I've got a separate, in my tabs, I've got a separate, what do you call it? I have a sticky note that has their name on it,
Yeah.
and all of their action items get filed under theirs. As they complete them, I just cross them off and keep moving through. So when we have our one-on-ones, I'm able to sit down with them and say, okay, you were supposed to take care of this, 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 this. Can I get some updates on that so I know where they're at?
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? Okay. Well, hearing no further questions, I will wrap up and say that it has been a pleasure, and ending early allows us to all get some extra time back in our day where we can start forming those lists of what is it that I want to get done for the rest of the night, and go about our day that way. I am always around. If anybody has questions after the fact, you're always welcome to reach out to me. For this week, my email is theprm@tmd61.com, but effective next week, it will be cgd@tmd61.com. Have yourself a wonderful night, everyone.
You too. Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks.
Thanks.